What if I told you that the modern man's greatest prison isn't made of iron bars, but of the desires he cultivates himself? That pornography, consumerism, and a sexual obsession are invisible chains stronger than any cell? You'd probably call me an extremist. But it is precisely this absurdity that I want to unveil. A desexualized mind is the most powerful weapon a man can wield, and few dare to take hold of it. Have you ever noticed how most men enter a room carrying an invisible need? They talk too much, smile too much, stare too much, always seeking approval, attention, and validation. It's as if every gesture they make silently screams, "Look at me, validate my worth." But there is another type of man, a rare, almost uncommon one. The man who seeks nothing. He doesn't rush in. There is no neediness in his eyes. He doesn't try to force his presence. He simply is. And, paradoxically, it's this very lack of seeking that makes him magnetic. When a man doesn't need to beg for approval, he becomes a beacon in the darkness. Everyone else is running in pursuit of applause, but he remains in silence, steadfast and composed. And this silence speaks louder than any words. Carl Jung called this the center, the internal point of balance around which the psyche rotates. It is not ego, not performance, not desire. It is the presence that is born from self-mastery, and this self-mastery is immediately perceived, not by the mind, but by the body. People feel it. Women feel it. I experienced this myself on one occasion. I remember being in a room filled with intellectuals, brilliant men, eager to be heard. They were all talking at the same time, competing for space. I didn't say a word. I simply breathed, maintained a serene gaze, and didn't try to conquer anything. Gradually, I noticed something curious. The eyes began to turn toward me, not because of what I was saying, but because of what I was transmitting in silence. There was something there, an invisible field, a sense of self-sufficiency. And this, inevitably, generated respect. Have you ever been in a similar situation? Have you noticed how, when you stop trying to impress, you suddenly start to get noticed? This is the paradox. When you seek nothing, you receive everything. And this doesn't mean indifference or arrogance. It means presence. A woman, in the presence of such a man, doesn't feel like an object to be conquered, but a presence to be respected. She relaxes, breathes, expresses herself. Not because she is being manipulated, but because she feels the lightness of not having to carry the projection of masculine neediness on her shoulders. Ask yourself, how many times in your relationships have you truly seen the other person as they are, and not as a solution for your inner emptiness? This man who seeks nothing stands out because he isn't trapped in the instinct to hunt for approval. While others react compulsively, he acts by choice. While others look to conquer, he observes. While others speak to be noticed, he simply is. And this difference isn't a detail, it's a watershed moment. Because, in a world where everyone is desperate to be seen, the one who demands nothing becomes unforgettable. Modern studies in social psychology confirm this. Self-assured people who don't show signs of excessive neediness are perceived as more trustworthy and attractive. It's not about physical beauty or status, but about energy. The absence of desperation creates magnetism. Think about public figures like Keanu Reeves. He isn't known for flaunting wealth or chasing the spotlight, but for his calm, quiet, almost enigmatic presence. And this demeanor generates universal respect and even admiration. I ask you a question. How many times have you entered a room already worried about how you would be seen? How many times have you molded your words to please, your gestures to conquer, your gaze to get attention? And in all this effort, didn't you lose precisely what could make you truly magnetic, your self-sufficiency? That is the secret of the man who seeks nothing. It's not about denying desire, but about not being governed by it. It's not about closing yourself off from the world, but about being present in it without being swept away. When you can maintain this posture, something around you changes. People feel security, stability, and confidence. And this cannot be bought or forced. It can only be born from within. That's why I challenge you. For the next 7 days, whenever you enter any place, be it at work, at university, or even at a social gathering, try the experiment of seeking nothing. Don't try to impress. Don't force interactions. Don't beg for glances. Just be. Breathe deeply. Keep your attention on yourself and allow your presence to speak louder than any words. Observe what happens. Observe the reactions. Perhaps you'll discover that true strength isn't in conquering, but in being. What happens to a man who doesn't master his own desires? He becomes predictable, and everything that's predictable can be controlled. The system knows this. It doesn't want you to realize the invisible slavery you live in, which is why it offers you constant distractions: pornography, social media, ads, music, movies. Everything is infused with eroticism, but not in a sacred sense, rather in a functional one. Functional for the market, functional for those who profit from your weakness. You think you're choosing, but the truth is someone has already chosen for you. I experienced this trap myself. There was a time when I noticed how my energy was slowly being drained, not by great tragedies, but by small daily leaks. 1 hour lost to distractions, another to empty pursuits, another to instant desires. In the end, I felt exhausted, without clarity, without focus, trapped in a sense of emptiness. And the question echoed in my mind: how can I be free if not even my attention belongs to me? This is the weight of invisible slavery. While you believe you are satisfying yourself, you are actually weakening yourself. While you think you are living as a man, you remain imprisoned as a boy trapped in fantasies. You don't realize that every click is a command, every stimulus is a leash, every moment of immediate pleasure is one more chain around your spirit. Ask yourself, how many times have you found yourself looking for that video, that image, that message, believing you needed it to feel alive? And afterward, how many times did you realize that, deep down, you were just emptier than before? Carl Jung said that the gods have become diseases. The forces that were once ritualized in myths and symbols now appear as compulsions. Sexual desire, being the most powerful, is also the most easily exploited. Pornography, for example, is not just a product, it's an instrument of containment, an anesthetic for male potency. And science confirms this. Research from the American Psychological Association shows that excessive consumption of pornography reduces motivation, affects memory, increases social anxiety, and creates dependency patterns. Similar to drug addiction. Want a real and impactful example? Look at the life of Elvis Presley, a man of immense talent, unquestionable magnetism, but who was slowly consumed by compulsions, drugs, easy pleasures, excesses that drained his vitality until only the shadow of what he could have been remained. He was not defeated by external enemies, but by his own internal slavery. The lack of mastery over his desires made him vulnerable, predictable, and controllable. Now reflect. How many opportunities have you lost because you were a prisoner to impulses? How many relationships could have flourished if you hadn't let your neediness speak louder? How many projects failed to be born because your energy was squandered on momentary pleasures? But there is a way. The man who learns to desexualize his mind, who can look at his own desires and choose not to be a slave to them, becomes unpredictable. He doesn't react automatically to stimuli. He isn't manipulated by promises of pleasure. He observes, breathes, and decides. And in that moment, something extraordinary happens. He frees himself. Can you imagine what it means to be free in a world that constantly tries to trap you? Can you imagine the strength of no longer being controlled by triggers programmed to keep you distracted? That is the desexualized mind, the ability not to yield to what was imposed on you, but to consciously choose who you want to be. That's why I ask you, are you really in control of your life? Or are you still living as a puppet of desires that are not your own? You can even hide thoughts, practice words, adjust your smile in front of the mirror, but there is something you can never hide: the energy you carry inside you. That energy manifests in your gaze, your posture, the way you occupy a space. Women perceive this even before you open your mouth. And here is the hard truth. It's not beauty, muscles, or status that defines a man's presence, but his relationship with his own desires. When a man is driven by uncontrollable sexual impulses, even if he tries to hide it, his body reveals it. His gaze escapes in the middle of a conversation. His breathing quickens. There is tension in every gesture. This silent anxiety communicates something heavy: need. A woman can smile on the outside, but her nervous system has already caught the message. She closes up. She protects herself. She raises an invisible barrier. How many times have you felt that, even while being kind, something in your energy pushed people away instead of drawing them closer? I live this. There was a time when I projected my own neediness onto a woman. I didn't see her as she was, but as a solution to my loneliness. I wanted her to fill the emptiness that I myself didn't want to face. At first, it seemed to work. She smiled, reciprocated, even welcomed me. But little by little, her energy changed. She became cold, distant, as if she were carrying a burden. Only later did I understand. What I was offering was not love, it was a demand. I wasn't seeing the person in front of me, but only the reflection of what I needed. This invisible weight destroyed the bond before it even had a chance to flourish. Carl Jung described this phenomenon as the projection of the anima. The man who does not integrate his internal feminine part projects it onto women, turning them into screens for his fantasies and needs. He doesn't see the real woman. He sees a remedy for his loneliness. And the result is always the same. A suffocating relationship where she is forced to play roles: the savior, the seductress, the understanding one, anything but herself. Think of Marilyn Monroe. Millions desired her, but few saw her. Reduced to a symbol of male fantasies, she was crushed by the weight of expectations she could never meet. Her story is the painful proof of how projection destroys not only the woman, but also the man who practices it. Now I ask you, how many times have you really seen a woman as a whole person and not as an escape for your neediness? How many times, while talking, was your mind trapped in hidden desires that made the atmosphere heavy? That is the difference between the man who projects and the man who integrates. The first suffocates, the second liberates. And it is precisely there that the desexualized mind shines. The man who is not a slave to his impulses looks into eyes without devouring, listens without manipulating, and touches without demanding. His energy is clear, firm, but light. And this generates something rare: security. Security not from someone who represses desire, but from someone who feels it deeply and chooses to channel it rather than be swept away by it. And in this safe space, the woman finally blossoms. She relaxes, opens up, and trusts, because she senses that she is not in front of someone who reduces her to a role, but in front of someone who recognizes her as a presence. Science also confirms this impact. Research on nonverbal communication shows that 93% of perception in human interactions is linked to signals beyond words: tone of voice, posture, gaze, energy. This means you can say all the right things, but if your energy screams neediness, it will be heard before any sentence. The man who learns to transform this energy becomes different from all others. He doesn't need to prove anything, because his presence already communicates everything. He doesn't need to chase validation, because it comes naturally. And this isn't magic, it's a consequence. A consequence of no longer being controlled by an invisible desire that gives him away with every gesture. Ask yourself, do you want to be remembered as just another one who weighs down the room with his neediness, or as the one who generates lightness, trust, and respect just by being present? When a man learns to retain and transmute his energy, something extraordinary happens. He stops being just a body reacting to stimuli and becomes a magnetic field. I'm not talking about repression or forced celibacy, but about conscious channeling. Sexual energy, for Carl Jung, was the foundation of the psyche, not to be wasted on blind impulses, but to be elevated, transformed, and integrated into something greater. This is the strength of the desexualized mind, not killing desire, but putting it at the service of consciousness. I lived this firsthand. There were nights when impulse called me, dragging me toward easy distractions, but I chose to stay with myself. Instead of yielding, I wrote, I studied, I created. The result was surprising. Entire pages were born from those moments, insights that changed my life and the lives of other men. It was then that I realized that retention didn't take anything from me. On the contrary, it gave me everything. I wasn't repressing, I was transmuting. And what used to dissipate in seconds was now transforming into a presence that vibrated for days. Have you ever noticed how ordinary men are always drained, tired, and scattered? They chase after immediate pleasure and are never satisfied. In contrast, the man who retains, who chooses, who observes, becomes stronger. His voice gains depth, his vision becomes clear, his aura changes. He doesn't need to beg for attention because his presence naturally attracts it. And women instantly perceive this, not as a seduction technique, but as a rare stability in a world of fragmented men. Nikola Tesla was an example of this. His genius was not just in his intellect, but in the way he directed his creative energy. He understood, consciously or not, that vital force should not be wasted on momentary impulses, but channeled into inventions that would change the world. Tesla didn't seek to conquer cheap applause. He built a legacy that resonates to this day. And modern science confirms this ancient wisdom. Research in neuroscience shows that the discipline of delayed gratification increases emotional resilience, strengthens long-term memory, and broadens mental clarity. The man who practices retention not only gains mastery over himself, but also creates space for his energy to manifest in other areas: creativity, purpose, and leadership. I ask you, how many projects have you abandoned because you were too drained? How many ideas died before they were born because your energy was spent on instant pleasures? And what if that same energy were invested in building something lasting? What would your life be like if, instead of feeling exhausted, you vibrated with presence, clarity, and power every day? I propose a challenge to you. For 21 days, consciously choose to retain, not just in the sexual aspect, but also in other impulses, social media, food, shopping. Whenever you feel the urge to give in, breathe, observe, and channel. Use that fire to write, create, work, and train. At the end, notice how your mind becomes clearer, how your body gains strength, and how your presence becomes unmistakable. This is the path of integration. Desire doesn't disappear, but it stops being a tyrant. It becomes a servant. And at that moment, the man stops chasing external things to feel like someone, because he finally understands he is already someone, even before the world notices. And the world inevitably responds to that coherence. Doors open, relationships transform, and opportunities arise. Not because he desperately sought them, but because his presence already carries what others are looking for. This is the true power of the desexualized mind. Not absence, but sovereignty. Not emptiness, but fullness. Not repression, but freedom. After all, a man who is no longer a slave to his impulses is, by definition, a free man. And a free man is the most transformative force that can exist. If there is one truth you should take from this text, it is that the desexualized mind does not mean the absence of desire, but sovereignty over it. The man who is no longer carried away by impulses finds an unshakable center within himself, and that center transforms everything around him. This is what makes him free, what makes him magnetic, what makes him a man who inspires trust and respect without needing to ask for anything. And if this message resonated with you, know that the next step of your journey is already here. The next video that appears on the screen is the next step in your evolution of wisdom, so that you become 1% better than you are now. I thank you for being with me this far, and I'll be waiting for you there, because your transformation doesn't end at this point. It has only just begun.